by a skin, and it's kind of separate from the what it's receiving from the world. So let's think that is an I. So how I can be free?
I am free.
The one thing that we easily think that is that there is must or should, that we should do something or we must do something, but actually there isn't. Like, we can do anything we physically can. It's only that because we are living in society or in terms of society, first of all, everything that we can do is not necessarily. Oh no, let's not go there. So the society or the people or the situations give us some rules, and often we feel that we are bound to it, so we think that we must do something. But it's only because we are accepting those rules. And I'm not saying that it's a bad thing to accept the rules, because a lot of the rules are actually so that we could all just feel a bit better here. But sometimes they also come to limit us. And one thing is that we do want to limit the freedom of an individual, because we have the ideas of good and bad, to which we're not right now going either.
Are we free in our minds? I'm not.
Or in our body?
But in our mind. Can I think whatever I want?
That is also like a nice question, because I think, but we come to another subject on that.
Okay.
Let's return to that a bit later. So I can do whatever, but then the society, like, of course, might punish me of what I'm doing, because the society, whatever that is, it doesn't need to be the state or the laws. It can be as well the group of friendships that if I'm doing something that is for some reason not approved in that social community or connections, they are punishing me somehow, probably. Or then, if it works nicely, they are actually communicating me why the things that I'm doing should not be done, and maybe I agree with them, maybe I don't. And if I agree with them, and I truly feel that I agree, then I'm still kind of free. It's that like, I don't want to do things. But a lot of the things that tie us are actually, I feel, that really bound to the community that we have need to be a part of something, because we feel to be separate. And because I want to be part of something, like some group of people, I start to learn those rules that are not said, or that are there, but they are just not. There's all the time invisible rules. And actually, even if I feel that I would want to do something that is going against those rules, it might mean that I will lose that friendship and feel even more alone, which is a state that I'm actually afraid of. So I bind myself, I limit myself onto those rules, because I'm afraid of something. So one thing that I kind of understood, that the only way to be free is not to be afraid of anything. And that is difficult. Well, I don't know, is it a difficult thing to do? Like, most of people are afraid of death. And I always think that I'm not afraid of dying. Like, I'm not like looking happily to meet it, but I don't feel right now that I would be afraid of it. But at the same time, I actually feel a lot that I'm afraid of living. Like, there are so many things that I'm afraid of to do, and eventually it all has to do with the thing that I'm thinking that I'm dying, so I have a limited amount of time or chances or whatever. So I'm limiting myself because I try to protect myself from being hurt or being disappointed, which is about the same thing. So I'm limiting myself because I'm afraid of something. So again, how does this relate to the dance? I noticed that I'm sometimes afraid of to say no, just because I don't want to hurt the other person. And I don't want to hurt the other person because then there's a chance that he or she might not like me or think that I'm something that I don't want to be seen as. So all the time the feedback of the people, that is not even the feedback of the people, but it's my thinking of what people will think if I do this is limiting me. And I'm choosing my actions not on the base of what I want, but on the base of how will I be seen in this group of people. And then it again becomes to the question that it would be so nice to avoid, but so what am I then?
But on the same point, there are dances that are looking after a while like going to be boring, really not what you want, kind of stiff or whatever. And then after a while, if you stay to it, you learned a lot out of it because it was really something to learn out of the dance, which showed up quite difficult or whatever. And so with the same knowledge, like, okay, first I want to be free to get out of a dance if I don't want to. And on the other side, sometimes it's good to stay in because maybe they are the most important experiences to me.
That's true.
And there is no good or bad. There's no this one is better than the other. Finally, it's the decision, and that's the important thing. It is the decision you are making, whatever it is. Because important thing is the decision, not to not decide.
That's true as well. Yeah, but it becomes also freedom. Well, the decision that becomes that in order to have the freedom, there is this thing of responsibility, and that's why because we don't, or okay, I talk about myself. I don't really want responsibility. I'm all the time not making decisions, which also actually doesn't make me free, because then I'm all the time in this, like, on what base I do make decisions from, and then how can I be totally responsible then? And the sad thing is that I'm always totally responsible of my own actions, whatever I do. But like all of the, like most of the I don't know, stage religions, like power systems are always working with this, that we don't actually want the responsibility. And with the fear of dying, because like we all, so if we think about killing, like most of us understand the situation where it's a question that if I don't kill somebody, I will be killed. We understand that the person will kill somebody, will choose that instead of choosing to be dead. And it's understandable, but at the same time, I don't know how is it understandable, and I don't understand the fact that we see that it somehow takes away the responsibility of the killing. But at the same time, most of the armies work as a sense that if I'm a soldier, it always goes up, who has the responsibility, and I'm not actually responsible of like pressing the trigger, because that's my orders, what I took. And the orders are orders. And my responsibility is actually to follow the orders, not to think for myself.
Is it same thing happening in a contact improv class?
No.
Could be.
I mean, something that I found in contact info that is really important and always told, take your own responsibility. Go in when you want, go out when you want, never do what you don't want. It's always about responsibility. I mean, what you make out of it, like if you're looking after the one who is dancing better than you, that's the problem of every single person.
But at the same time, as a teacher, I feel that if something happens on my class, it's really hard not to feel responsible of that, even if I would know that it's not actually my responsibility, that I see the situation and it was something that the person chose to do themselves. It's still really hard not to think that what could have I done so that this wouldn't have happened. But it's true in, yeah. That's why contact improvisation is also a nice form of the responsibility. And it's also a lot about the freedom. So if I come really into contact improvisation, the reason why there is so much talking about not crapping people is actually because of that freedom responsibility relationship. As long as I keep the other one, like I let him or her be free, I feel that they are responsible of themselves. But as soon as I limit them, because it's my, like I limit somebody else, the responsibility shifts onto me. Because I'm not giving them the full choice that they could choose.
What? No, it's I think it's separated in both, because you always need two, like the dance, for
Okay,
example.
so I show you really
if you're the
practical.
teacher and I'm the student, I give you the responsibility and you are taking it. So
I give you like practical. Can I show it to you?
yes, you need to get up.
Yeah, you need to get up. Like, not sure that I what you said, so I just reacted. Okay, so in here, as long as I don't hold you, I don't limit you. You are responsible of yourself. Even if I do this, you are responsible for yourself.
Yes.
In this situation,
You're responsible.
I become responsible. And it's my decision. And to say that you are responsible of yourself and at the same time limiting you and leaving you over there. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that's why there's a clear shift of responsibility, and also to be clear of that, because actually, like some things when you grab, it's not a bad thing. Like it can make some movements really, really possible that wouldn't be possible otherwise, but then you have to really be aware of what is happening. And that's why it's much easier to teach, okay, don't crap, than to teach that you can, but until you have so much kind of sense that you start to learn, like when is it useful and when you let go. And I've been dancing now 10 years and I don't have it. Like there is a situation where something happens fast and I notice that I do this. And then maybe I let it go, but it's already like the half of the second that like limits something. And at the same time, like often when we dance, I still feel responsible of the other one, because somehow I don't know why. Because there is no reason that I should, but it just comes that way, even if I'm not limiting them at all. And I noticed that the best, like the way, not the best, but like most enjoyable dances are actually when I'm dancing with the persons that I can feel that they are taking care of themselves. I don't need to feel that they are taking care of me, because I can take care of me unless they limit me. But I feel that they are taking care of themselves, so I don't need to limit my own choices in order to protect or save them, but I can go fully where I want to and be sure that they will handle the situation the best they can. And that is also like there is some sense, or the most sense of freedom in that like most of the options seems to be open, because I don't need to take care of anybody else, because eventually I can't know what the other person does. So if I need to take care of that, it takes a lot of energy to be aware of that all the time. Instead of if I can be concentrated on what is happening here and know that what is happening there, that there is all the time the responsibility is clear, it's super easy.
Which is the same in a relationship. No?
In many relationships, yeah, I would think so. Or then that I'm sure that if I think of this from the relationship point of view, but also from the dance, that if something is wrong or not okay, that the person is able to communicate it to me so clear that I understand. So also that I don't need to read minds or like try to figure out, okay, so what is going on, but I can trust that the other one is able to tell me that what is not okay, or if something is going wrong, or if whatever. So again, I don't need to worry about what does the other person think or feel of me, but they are telling if something is wrong. If it's good, they're also telling when something is good. But that also creates the sense of freedom, because then I don't need to worry about. I don't need to be afraid of what the other one might think or might do, in a sense. Ville, did you fall asleep already?
Not yet.
So how can we free your mind?
I'm free.
Is it free? Is your mind free?
Yeah, when it's dreaming.
When it's dreaming.
Thank you.
But you just said that it's not.
Oh yeah. True. I'm not sleeping yet. Hey, question. You were speaking about the freedom, and it was very like connected to the other people, and then there was this fear of death, and I didn't find the connection there, and some missing.
You didn't find the connection between the death and
yeah.
and the other people.
Yeah, yeah, this kind of and the freedom. It was going in these deep levels, and I missed some point.
Is there some?
No, I missed some point maybe.
Yeah,
you were
like
about this army thing. I was thinking, was it connected to that? Or
was it connected? No, it's
maybe.
not only connected to that. It's like more about that. We are limiting ourselves because we are afraid of something, and ultimately, most of us is that like to be afraid of something. It has something to do with death, because like that we know that the time of experiencing things like they are now is limited. And it's a funny thing that we would be afraid of death because we don't have any idea what is going to happen. So why? But that's the thing that we are most afraid of, that we don't know what is going to happen, and yet I don't actually know what is going to happen right now. I have a fair assumption because I've been in quite similar situations before, but how can you know? Which is I don't know, the thing that you don't want to think about. Like, whenever we are going for a car ride or into your airplane or whatever, you never know what happens. But because most of the times nothing really happens and you just get safely where you're going, it's okay. And maybe it's nicer that, like, how horrible it would be noted that, okay, this plane is going to crash. I don't know. Like, sometimes I wonder, like, is there somebody to be afraid of being born? Because that is truly something that you should be afraid of, if there would be you who can be afraid of being born.
Maybe there's more reason to be afraid of it.
Yeah, like, we don't know about the death. But then it becomes to this freedom of mind, like, and how mind is formed and what mind is. And what kind of I don't know.
Hey, we are paid for this.
You are paid for this. You are paid, but I'm not. This is so unfair. So why I'm doing the talking? Come on. There can be a hypothesis, like, so there is a perception, approximately about 5 senses, that are bringing information onto your mind all the time. Then we start to learn things, making patterns out of it, making comparisons, connections. Okay, they all have 2 eyes, so they must have something similar. And then we start to have words. What is a nose? What is a floor? What is a thing? And then because somebody is telling us what it is, and it's that. But okay, we can define that it's a floor. That is a different thing than the wall, even though it's that as well. And then we start to build this world inside of, from the words, that somehow connects to this, but it's not actually the same thing. The word floor is a word floor, and it's a symbol for this. So then to free your mind is like, how can you open it from those definitions, or make a change that it's not, like, you can, but it has so much to do with the senses. So that's why, like to change your mind is to change your perception. The easy way to do it is drugs. You drink of alcohol, your perception changes, your timing changes, your memory changes, like a lot of the things changes. You take other drugs, like they change it differently. But at the same time, I think that there's like, it's again like two-way process. Like even if we try to think them as separate, which they are not, like the mind or the perception, they are the same thing. It's just like, in the same way I have a right hand, I have a left hand, but they are both like part of me, so they are the same thing, yet I can define them differently. So that our mind, because we learn that that is orange over there, and this is kind of wood, or that is yellow, and the labeling comes so clear that as soon as we perceive something that we cannot label, we feel that we are lost. That is also one nice thing about contact improvisation. Because you might do things that you don't actually understand. What did you do? It's really hard to tell, like, what did happen, because so much happened in such a short period of time that it, like, 1 second take 3 pages of writing. And that's the whole thing all the time. Like, most of the things, if you really go into sensing, there's no sense of verbalizing that because it would take ages. But at the same time, like a lot of the time when we think about the mind, at least me, because I'm a verbal thinker, I think about verbalization of the things. And I'm not sure is the mind really that either. Because some people see pictures and like that is thinking. My thinking is a verbal. But anyway, so the mind starts to label the perception and also might start to limit perception because something that doesn't fit into the labels that I have is not real. Like kids are all the time told that don't tell stories, don't tell lies. Like stories can be nice, but then it's really difficult if they mix with what we think as a reality, because then we don't know how to react onto that. And some things are things that we should react. Then there's lots of people in Finland now. There's a lot of them in drugs and in streets because like most of mental care was taken down on the 90s, and it's all like open that are perceiving world really, really differently, and they are crazy. Or that's how we label them, because their sense or perception of the world is just too different than ours, and then we give them drugs so that it would be maybe a bit more similar than ours, so that they could function in the same society as we do. And at the same time, like if I think of religious texts or prophets or whatever, like nowadays they would be just in a mental institution or full of drugs.
Jesus today, sitting in a white room.
Probably, yeah. But if we don't think of that, and if I think of myself, so how can I be free to really perceive and have a sensation without having to put it on the cage of label? And at the same time, when I think about my learning process in dancing again, to be able to verbalize and put it on the label has been really, really valuable. So it's again two things. Like there is a clear value of labeling things and thinking and seeing, okay, how did it, like what did you felt? How did this go? Like how did I get onto your shoulder? And being able to say like, aha, it went like this. And also because somehow it's again the whole, so the possibility of repeating it actually becomes bigger than if we are just, I don't know. Because then we don't have any starting point. And yet, at the same time, letting my perception be so free of the labels that I could firstly perceive and then think, does it go underneath the label, and not to think as in labels. Because I can have the label and then before I even perceive, I tell what I should perceive. And that is the most trickiest things of teaching contact improvisation, because it's so much about perception. And I have the words for perception that I have, but those words might connect differently onto your perception, and I don't have your perception. It's not that I could say that you do this movement, and you do this movement, and you do this movement, and we look it on the mirror and see that we are all doing the same. It's something that is based on perception. And that is also really difficult for us, that it actually allows this freedom of not having the right or the wrong. And because we always want to do the right, mostly, because most of our schooling is going through true that you have the right answer and you have the wrong answer. And of course, if you want to like succeed, whatever that is in whichever situation, you have to have the right answer. So there you are, rolling on the floor, and somebody is telling you, well, find this kind of perception, but I don't really know what are the words for you to perceive it. But you're probably perceiving the same, but maybe the words for you are different, or maybe it's colors, maybe it's something else. And how can you tell that it's right? I can see when something happens. Yeah, that's why yesterday's class was so nice, because it's so clear. Wrong, whoever was on my class. Yeah.
But it's funny that one of the biggest efforts of the mankind is the word. And when they started to create words, to create something that you can transmit and both have the same visualization of stone. I see stone, I think stone, I say stone, you know what I mean. Which is the biggest effort mankind has, and we are working somehow on the way back before these vocalization, on the richness of sensation against the storage of labeled how you to say it that to bring things in a pattern. But maybe it is like lots of natural societies. They had both. They could talk, and they were still having their rituals in a really alive way, which we do have too, but not really alive.
I think it's just, well, if we come to rituals, it also might be that the rituals have changed somehow. But there's different kind of rituals. Maybe they have become more individual. At least, like in Finland, I feel that the certain kind of society has really like somehow the state has broken it down. Because at one point there was such a good care of the people that you didn't really need the help of your like maybe relatives or something. So it kind of also it's creating something, but it's breaking down something as well. And then the rituals and the happenings become more and more kind of individual or separate or smaller units than it was before, because you needed the support of the family, of the village, so all of those things were together. But I don't know. Like this is the nice thing what you said about that you think stone, you see stone, you say it, and I understand what you mean, but at the same time I have an image, but I don't know what kind of stone, I don't know how does it feel, I don't know like what is the shape of it, what is the color of it, instead of you having the stone and then giving it to me, and then all of those things are there.
Yeah, the abstraction of the thing is not the thing.
Yeah, that's the thing, but like a lot of, that's the thing. But like lot of somehow I feel that a lot of the world is more and more verbalized. Like it's happened. Like if you think of Facebook, it's like it's words of status. Like it's somebody experienced something, and
it's more image-like now.
Yes.
I think it's more image-like. And also more popular is Twitter than Live Journal or something like that. Diaries where you have to write long tales are not so popular as these where you have to give just short few sentences, and mostly it's like I receive mostly images, pictures.
Yeah, the pictures are even more dangerous because what shall I say? Danger is not a right thing. But I'm a picture maker. I'm an artist. I'm working with photographic pictures, and so I'm kind of I'm reading very clear what I'm seeing in pictures. And if I see advertising and I read what is all in there, and I know that most of the people cannot read it but understand it. So it is working, but it's not understood. What is working in the picture as an advertising, and also in all those massive pictures that are around us, because we are all taking photographs, and all these photographs that we are taking is in a very big amount of them is reproduction of an image that we saw.
Yeah.
And so we are constitution our reality while we are reproducing the images that we saw already. And this is again giving us rules, like you were saying. This is how we are. But we never thought about this. We saw pictures, we're doing pictures like those that we saw, and on this we're going on in a direction that we never decided. It's much more subconscious than to write something. I would not write the sentence out of the advertising. I am free when I'm used this washing powder, you know?
Yeah.
But if I see the picture and the mother is so happy and with her son because she's using this and that washing powder, the picture is in our mind, bam. And it's working even if we don't know it.
Yeah. So, but something again, what you said, it again brings us into like, so what is I? Is that most of this is like you said, reproducing of the pictures that is telling us like who we are. So we are all the time doing this, that we are telling ourselves like who we are, and of course the advertisement is who we want to be. I would think.
It's using, it's creating or using fears, for example, fear of death and fear for not being loved or so. Things that are so rudimental. What has everybody on the world? Fear for not being loved. So how can we turn this to sell our chocolate bar?
Chocolate.
I like the idea of using the words and not. So I guess there are at least two ways. One is like labeling or defining things, like Flora you said, by a word. But this somehow makes a word stick to the object it labels or defines. But the other concept is to use words as pointers. So that makes space between the word and the object it points to. And in this way it's quite more usable. For instance, you don't have to define every aspect of the movement, but you probably have experienced something similar, so you just can make a pointer to your experience, and that describes the process in a much more like understandable for you way for me to get it later, for instance. So yeah, and I think this idea of using words not like labeling things and defining, but just pointing, allow this space between the real world around and the mind concept we are using to describe it.
Yeah, it's true. It's like, and like the words are really useful. It's not really a problem until like that we understand that it's, because they're actually always pointers in a way. Again, this book that I mentioned yesterday by Alan Watts, there's this example of England or United Kingdom at some point, I don't know, like 1600 or 1700, they changed their calendar. So instead of being 11th of September, it was like 17th of September, and then they just changed it. And then they have like loads of people in front of Parliament saying like, give back our 7 days. And it's not that those people were actually so dumb. It's like the same thing probably would happen today, but it might, like just on a different scale, because we are still thinking that the word and like how do we call it is the same thing as real thing, which is not. Like it doesn't matter how do we call this day, it's still this day. It doesn't matter how do we call this moment, it's still this moment. It doesn't matter how, it's just the word. And when you understand that it's just the pointings of something that is actually happening here.
Yeah, but
That is
you made a question on how to come to this understanding.
Yeah, how to come to this understanding, I don't know.
To travel and to see other things, I think it opens. To see, for example, that the time is not equal everywhere.
Meditation.
Yeah, there's one thing. But it's also like, it's an interesting thing about our schooling, like how do we actually, like, what is the process, how do we learn it? So we have to learn kind of out of it, because if you think of children, they like, because they don't have fixed things as words until somebody's telling them that you can't call that because it's not that, that is that. So don't call that it, it's that. And then like repeatedly it will become fixed. So then we again need to kind of learn out of it, maybe.
Learn to play again.
Yeah. Another book just about this, I just don't remember it, so, but there's Chuan Chu, if anybody has read like Chinese philosophy, but he has also like, I think 3 different way of discussing, which one of is like free, that kind of it's not so important, like that the labels are just labels. And then one of it's like that you have this kind of a logic place. So if we are talking about something, we agree to use the same labels so that we can have a discussion or argument or whatever, and understanding that we are only using them from the logic place. And then there was one more, but I actually don't remember what it was. But if you're interested about this, it's a very nice book. Yeah. What is the time? This is one nice thing.
16 to 3.
16 to 3. So I can decide to stop it because it's 6 to 3, or then I can decide to stop it because I feel like it. But if there's anything that you want to discuss, we can continue discussing. But I just thought that I would stop talking so much. I can talk tomorrow again.
But and express one more idea, which is I find usable, is like when people trying to, about what you said the last about the book, trying to communicate and they have different label meanings, they cannot understand each other until they have a common picture and common system of labeling, which comes to an idea that we can label things differently, which leads to an idea that there are different types of this labeling, or in other words, we can see the floor like as a support, or as a dancing partner, or a collection of bricks, or the collection of pieces of wood, or like a thing to draw lines on. So there are many times things to define ways. Yeah, and then there's like practice or mastering of defining the environment in a right way for the situation. For instance, if I have some goals in the current situation, then I would like to define it one way. In another situation, I would have a different situation, and it could be defined differently. So the wisdom is to to be able to define it in a correct way, because our mind is limited in the way it cannot perceive the situation as it is. It still have to be limited in some way, because I cannot work with the floor if I like have it, and in the same time I understand those thousands of meanings I can describe it. So I just have to choose something, and of course out of those thousands, only maybe one or two are usable for current situation. So
Yeah, so
yeah.
just I slightly, no, I don't disagree really, but like, actually, I think that you can have all of those different labels in a situation if you are by yourself, right? It makes you see different things, maybe. So maybe you choose, but you can actually go them and even have quite a few of them in your mind. But then when you need to communicate it with somebody, maybe then you need to choose more.
Yes, but
Yeah.
just communication
Yeah.
in a wider sense.
Yeah.
For instance, if I'm trying to solve something by myself,
Yeah.
it's also in a way of communication, because I have to do something with this. And if I am to dance, then I don't care that this floor has lines or something. But if I am to build this building, then I do care about those lines, like this. This
Yeah.
is also like a way of communication.
Yeah, actually these lines are also a good example, because it depends like what is the game that you play, which lines do you,
Yeah.
like which lines do you actually look for.
Yeah.
One more book is by Robert and Pirsig. Pirsig, is it right? I'm not sure. Like Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, which is a really good book. It's the same thing. It's difficult with the books. Like also the Alan Watts that I was saying yesterday. Like they've been published in the 60s, I think, and that make for me so much sense. And like the Pirsig has sold like millions of copies, and still nothing has changed. It's like it's really sad in a way. But he's in the book looking for the quality and coming into well, there's so much that I don't remember, but one of the things is that quality is something that most of people can somehow sense, but it's really hard to label. Like what is it that it's making it quality? Like he was a teacher of English or language in a university, and like that's just one part of the book. But anyway, like most of the students can like sense the quality what is there, like when there is quality, and it's not about the form of writing, like what is that you can actually label that when you do this first and then you write this section and then you like do this, but that is not the quality, it's only the form. So what is the quality, and then like trying to find what would be the labeling, then it's really difficult.
But I guess that this is exactly what is in all the art forms.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
important thing, no matter if dancing or painting or whatever, the sensation of quality, the thing that you cannot say what it is.
Yeah, and at the same time, the more you learn, like you said, that you like, how do you learn to read pictures? The more, like, I feel that more I watch dance, for example, and or more I listen to music that I have been doing much longer, like, more I can define like why this is good. But if you would repeat it, kind of the same technical thing, it necessarily wouldn't be good. So the quality is still something that I don't quite catch, but I can label them that because of this and this and this, I really like it. But something in that piece is actually unique that you can't define.
Sometimes happens. It comes out. You can't create it with a special intention. You can't repeat it in the way. It happens and it comes out, and you can see it, and everyone can feel it, but you can't catch it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can create a surrounding where the possibility that
Yeah,
it
for
will
sure.
happen is much
For
higher
sure.
than in another
Yeah.
situation.
And I think also for that there is techniques in a way, but it's also like this isn't really about this topic anymore. I just remember this one thing about like literature, that there was a like festival of literature, and there was one writer who like was like all the critics loved it, and it also sold a lot, the book. And then he was saying on the like panel discussion that, well, yeah, I was a bit like looking at the newspapers and thinking that, okay, if I like connect these elements, it probably will sell well, and and immediately there like started discussion. Is it like, but like some people are really furious that is it art, because he has consciously made a choice that I also wanted to sell, which is, and also the question of the quality or the art. Like it's also a funny thing, like who is actually defining what is good or what is not, because that is also such a subjective thing.
Topic.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to sauna. It's warm. We can leave Ville sleeping here, and
Sun
I
is
have a free
shining.
mind. Sun is